Welcome, science friends, to ecological succession, primary succession. So ecological succession is a series of predictable stages of growth that an ecosystem will go through. So as an ecosystem is developing, there are predictable steps that, okay, we did this thing, now we can move on to the next portion of growing this ecosystem. And there are two types of ecological succession. We have a category of primary succession, and we have a category of secondary succession. We're going to be looking at primary succession in this video. Primary succession starts from bare rock. There's no soil, it's literally just rock, so we got to start from scratch. We have to make that soil. Some examples of where we might see primary succession. Often after volcanic eruptions, we have the lava that comes out of the volcano, and that lava hardens and cools into rock. So again, no soil, we have to make that soil by breaking down rock. Sometimes glaciers they're over rock, and as they melt and retreat, that rock that those glaciers are sitting on is exposed. So again, starting from bare rock. Can be places that have been affected by severe erosion. So all of the Earth's crust is on top of some sort of rock. Sometimes if there's a lot of wind or water, it can wash away or blow away a lot of the soil, leaving the rock that the soil was on top of. We can even see primary succession happening in abandoned man-made structures. So things like parking lots, where it's asphalt or concrete, again, no soil, and we see primary succession happening starting from the sort of bare rock that is man-made. So usually primary succession starts with moss and lichen. They are the first organisms because moss and lichen don't need soil, so they can just blow their spores in the wind. Wherever those spores land, they will start to grow. These organisms, moss and lichen, live on rock, so it's a perfect starting place for primary succession. Once that soil has been established, then we can start getting plants, and plants usually lead to animals. But we gotta make the soil first. So the order of events is those first organisms, those moss and lichen, since they are the first ones on the scene, they are called pioneer species. Just like pioneers coming west across America, they are pioneering or they are starting new. These pioneer species, those moss and those lichen, they're starting an ecosystem from scratch. They are the first ones there. Those pioneer species must be hardy, so they have to be resilient. They have to be able to stand up to those barren rocks and those other barren environments. Some small grasses, once soil is starting to get established, they can also be considered pioneer species, but usually it's the first ones on the scene, those moss and lichens. Once the soil is established, we can get into intermediate species. Intermediate means middle. So pioneer species comes first, then we get the middle species, those intermediate species. Those are things like grasses, small bushes and shrubs, some species of trees that are what we call shade intolerant. So they do not tolerate a lot of shade. They need sunlight. They need bright, direct sunlight. And so that's perfect because there isn't a lot of shade at the beginning. We see insects because they are primary consumers. We see small lizards and birds, other small mammals as they start to have food from the plants that are starting to appear. As we move through, things get bigger, we have more species diversity, and the final ecosystem is called a climax community. A climax community is the final stage because it's the ecosystem at its best. It's not going to get any better. We have an entire food web. We have all of the trophic levels. Everything is really balanced, so it will stay unchanged. We have the right consumers, the right producers. They're all interacting perfectly. And the only reason a climax community would die off would be due to some sort of event. It could be a natural event like a fire, or it could be humans coming in and interfering with that community. We will see that fully formed ecosystem with a giant diversity of different plants and animals, and again, those fully formed food webs and trophic levels. Each biome has its own specific necessities for a climax community and what that looks like because of those climates that are very specific to each biome. So each biome has a specific set of species in their climax communities that are adapted to that environment. Here's a quick look at how this progression or succession happens with primary succession. We start with the bare rock, whether that's from a glacial retreat or lava or whatever, starting new with rock. Then our pioneer species arrive, those lichens and moss, they start to break down the rock to create soil. And as we're starting to move, okay, we have a little bit of soil, which means we can have things like weeds and small plants. And as those lichens and mosses break down more and more rock, we get more soil, which leads to bigger and bigger plants and more diversity, which eventually moves us to intermediate species, which is more shade-tolerant trees that can grow in the shade of other trees, other plants, more animals, insects, mammals, reptiles, and finally at the end we have a climax community where everything is at its prime. We have a whole bunch of different species interacting with each other in those food webs and trophic pyramids. That was primary succession. I hope it helped.